Personal Finance Simulations Part 1. So again, we're doing this in 2 sessions. Tonight, we'll be kicking things off with 6 sessions, or excuse me, 6 simulations in this session. So Kevin has just sent out a link to our handout. You're definitely going to want to grab that and open that in another window or tab and come back to it later. But this is a PDF document. It has a page for each of the simulations that we're going to talk about with links to a lot of the things that I'm sharing today. So that should be useful to you. It'll also go up on our website most likely tomorrow by midday. So if you don't catch it now, you can catch that over on our website under the archives tomorrow or Friday. So the featured simulations that we're doing in this series are here on the screen. So this should be a total of 12 different simulations that we're going to be talking about. But the ones that we're focusing in on tonight are the ones up here at the top. And so picked the ones that are more focused on, I would say, budgeting, although some of these have some budgeting elements down here in these other ones. But I wanted to have a variety at each session. So we're going to be kicking things off with Budget Challenge, then moving on to Stash, 2 different simulations from Intuit, both Mint and TurboTax, and finally Claim Your Future and Jumpstart's Reality Check. These vary from ones that you can run. Stash, for example, you can run for an entire school year if you want. Budget Challenge is specifically a 10-week simulation. Intuit Mint and Intuit TurboTax each have ways that you can do those over a period of a couple of days to a week or so. The last 2 are definitely able to be done in a shorter period of time. So hopefully you'll find a little bit, there's sort of a little bit in here for everyone. Hopefully you'll find something that meets your needs or that might be of interest to you in checking out down the road. And then obviously these other ones we're going to talk about in 2 weeks. So I know that there are other simulations out there. In fact, I'm sort of pushing a little bit here on using Spent in the next one. We are going to also going to do a few others that are sort of these short ones that I'll also mention next time we get together and just give them a quick head nod, if you will. In terms of uses for simulations, obviously they vary, but for the most part, they can provide some sort of more hands-on learning. They're usually very engaging and students really like them. They can reinforce concepts that you've already talked about in class, or they may introduce new concepts depending on how you use them. I like to this approach of learn by doing. Some of these are very much the kind of thing where, students have a chance to practice what they might do down the road. And that I think is incredibly important as opposed to just building skills as opposed to building knowledge, right? So we try and increase knowledge of our students, but giving them that opportunity to practice real world skills and learn by doing is very important. And obviously, as I mentioned earlier, these simulations come in all different topics. Some of them cross over to several different ones. So we're going to kick off with Budget Challenge. And by way of if you can find that raise your hand feature, I'm going to ask you to raise your hand if you are familiar with Budget Challenge. So some of you may recognize it as being the program that for a while was sponsored by H&R Block. It is no longer sponsored. It existed before the H&R Block Budget Challenge, and it exists still today afterwards. So okay, it looks like not very many are familiar with it. Good. So this will be new information to many of you. I'd invite you over in the chat to share if you have any experience with any of the simulations that we've talked about or that I've mentioned by name, and or any others maybe that you know of. The other thing that I just want to remind everybody before we get started This is an introductory sort of overview session. So if you have, really detailed questions, I'd be welcome to try and answer some of them. But if we get like totally into the details, I may have to do some homework for you and follow up with you or help you find that answer. So, but please do ask questions as we go through. Okay, so we're going to kick off with budget challenge, and my next one should be a little video. I've got some video clips for most of these to share with you.
Have you ever heard of somebody forgetting how to drive a car or ride a bike? Well, that's the difference between learning and learning by doing. Our patented simulation is like no other. Only in Budget Challenge do students manage their own finances with actual individual accounts, making decisions, receiving payroll, paying bills, and managing debt in real time over 10 weeks. Trophies for achieving key financial goals, like setting up an emergency fund, contributing to a 401k, and paying down debt, along with competitive scoring and account balances updated daily, create a learning environment unmatched in its ability to instill not only knowledge, but also key financial skills and positive financial habits. Budget Challenge is fun, but it is not a game. It is the only ultra-real simulation where students get to experience the difficult tasks of managing money exactly the way adults do. You will see kids' faces light up, hear them talking about personal finance in the hallways and before classes, and witness the most engaging classroom discussions you have ever seen.
So that's a little pitch from Budget Challenge. So this is a company that started, it's a husband and wife duo that started this company, and it's interesting because they actually have a patent on this financial simulation. So those who look at this and think, oh, I could do this, but I want to, I could do this better, or I could do this differently. It's very hard because they patented this simulation approach, and it's really cool. It's really, really neat. And like they say, it's not a game. So some of these others might be considered more of a gamified approach, whereas this really truly is taking that perspective of a simulation in which students start out with a scenario. So all students start out with the same scenario and the same income. The difference is that they are all allowed then to make lots and lots of choices, and it focuses, I would say, less on, well, in parts it's the decision making that's involved, but then also in that practice of those skills. So paying bills on time, not going and overdrawing a balance. Those are the kinds of things that are very important. Making sure that students read the fine print and understanding what they're agreeing to. So it's a very I would say it's a complex simulation, but not so complex that it's hard to do. But it does have a lot of bells and whistles. Trying to do something like this and sort of hack your way into creating your own would not be easy. It would take a lot of time and effort to try and do something anywhere close to the comprehensive program that this offers. This is their own graphic. They call it the most complete program. It does include all of these different components. So they offer teacher training. I'm going to talk a little bit about some of these other pieces as well. There is a corresponding mobile app, a teacher community, parent engagement tools, some assessment pieces, what have you. This is a little bit of kind of what it looks like in terms of how students earn or accomplish goals. I mentioned this in the video with the trophies that students win. So very cool. It's neat. I think that we're, in this case, sort of rewarding behaviors, right? So, and we'll talk more about this when we get into some of the investment side of things in the next webinar, about this notion of competing for highest portfolio value and the challenge that some educators and others have with that. So this is a very different approach, and I think one that a lot of folks really appreciate. So when it comes to these trophies, here are some examples, and all of these are explained with videos. So there's a lot of different resources here. You don't have to figure out how to explain different components to your students. They've done it all. So students can sort of watch these on demand to figure out what it is when they have questions or need information. So there is a full teacher dashboard, so you can see what the engagement is like in your class. You can find out what is going on, and sort of has that whole back end for educators. Budget Challenge did add investing a while ago. It is an add-on in that you have to pay more for it, and we'll get to the cost of this in a few minutes. It is a lot of the sort of traditional, if you will, stock market simulations start out with a high amount that you're investing, like $100,000. This is a much more modest amount. I believe it's $5,000 offhand. And then students get to add to that over time with each pay period as they earn. They can put a little bit more money aside and invest it. They do not get to choose from individual stocks, only from mutual funds. And the trades are based on historical data. So it's not like in the moment kinds of information. So it's a little bit different than what you'll find elsewhere. You can, there's also a tax component of all of this, which I think is very important, as well as a credit component. And again, well, the tax part is on the investing in terms of how that impacts, in particular, how that can decrease your tax liabilities. But on the other part, there's a credit component as well. So again, the focus here is not on maximizing that portfolio value, but on learning strategies that are helpful over the long term. So I mentioned this one does come at a cost. For many years it was underwritten, and schools and teachers could sign their students up for free with the support from the underwriting from H&R Block. It's gone back to its sort of older method of charging per student. So on an individual basis, it is $25 per student or $30 with the investing plus added on. So you see that plus $5. So that's any students with five or more students from 5 to 240. If you do more than that, then they will give you over 300 students. It comes down to $20 each, which I know for a lot of you that might seem insurmountable. There is also a discount if you pay for multiple years in advance. So one of the things that they are touting right now is the ability to use Esser funding, which is some of that COVID relief funds. They actually, you can drill down to the state, and so that's what it looks like when you go to Pennsylvania. And it actually lists every school district and the funding that they have received for Esser. So you can have some conversations perhaps with your administrator. I know others use Perkins funding and some others that are in CTE. As well as some people that will try and seek business or community support to provide this for their students. They have recently updated and done a correlation to the new standards. So you might recall we did a session on the new personal finance national standards a while ago. So this has been updated, and they show where they're connecting within their curriculum. So this has a full textbook, if you will. You can order this actually in print off of Amazon if you want, or all of these chapters are available as PDFs when you log in with a free account as an educator and give this a test drive. So when you log on and request a teacher account, you will get a teacher homepage and a drop down here where you can go in and you can look at the curriculum. So for example, here in chapter 1, ironically called Keys to Financial Success, different, not the same one as the one from the Federal Reserve. You'll see some of the topics that are included. You can download the unit materials, the chapter download for students, or the teacher's guide download. So here's what some of that looks like. In addition, they have, as I mentioned before, there's a lot of videos. Most of these are available on YouTube, so you don't even have to log in if you want. There's a whole playlist of just these. So this is part of their action tour. You can learn, by going through all of these, how all of the simulation works. and sort of, and get a tutorial, if you will. So again, you can find those on YouTube, or you can find those when you log in. The other thing that you can do, and which they highly recommend that any educators do before using this with a class. So maybe you're wondering, maybe I would use this next year, right? Maybe it's too late this year, but it'd be worth checking out and maybe seeing how I can fit it in as I think things it through over the summer. So if that's the way that you're approaching it or thinking about it, I would encourage you to sign in and get a teacher play. Register for teacher play. So when I was taking the screenshot, I captured the one here. This is the one that starts actually tomorrow. I wouldn't recommend signing up for that one. It won't give you enough time to go in and make your vendor selections, because that takes a little bit of time. That's when you're going through and deciding things. I've got a screenshot of it here. What you're going to do in terms of housing, for example. And you really want to look, this is where I said it helps students to figure out how they need to read the fine print. You need to go through this carefully and make, ideally very well informed decisions. So this is something that you don't want to just sign up for and have to do by tomorrow when that simulation starts. You want to pick a window that would give you a little bit more time, and then you'd have the chance to go in and out over that 10 weeks and see what your students would experience if they were doing it. So I think it's great. I think a number of these ones you have access to do these kinds of things with, but this one in particular, because as I mentioned, it's a very comprehensive simulation, right? So there's a lot of pieces and parts. It can work well, it sort of sits over top of your existing personal finance course. But there's a lot to it, and you'll want to understand and have firsthand knowledge before doing this with students. So again, lots of resources and information. We're going to talk throughout the session today about sort of 3 different approaches to budgeting and how different simulations address each of these. So budget challenge, one of the things that students really get an appreciation for in this is this idea of cash flow budgeting. And so I mentioned before, there's a lot of videos. So this is actually a Google Sheet. You can download it as a Google Sheet, or make a copy for yourself, or you can get it in Excel. But right there embedded within these are videos that explain what you're getting here. And it talks about this whole concept of cash flow budgeting in terms of looking at the budget to make sure that you're never going to overspend. So looking at, okay, this is how much I have right now. This is how much I'm going to earn per pay. I'm expected to pay my my bills for rent. I'm going to split this, that's going to come once a month, but I'm going to get paid every 2 weeks, what have you. Yes, thank you for mentioning Knowledge Matters. It's one of the ones I was debating putting on my list, and as I said, I'm still considering a third phase of this. So that would definitely make my third phase. So anyhow, so this is, sort of an interesting approach and a great approach to budgeting, but probably one that doesn't get talked about quite as much in most personal finance classes. Okay, so the next one that we're going to talk about is Stash 101. And I'm just going to go back and scroll up. I think most of the folks that we have this evening, most of you guys are high school. There's a few of you that are elementary. Okay, so Stash 101 was formerly known as Pay Grade. Has anybody heard of this, or anybody heard of Pay Grade before? It was acquired by Stash and is now called Stash 101. So Stash 101 is another really cool simulation. Another one I'm going to ask, this isn't a personal finance simulation, but has anybody heard of Class Dojo? So that's the app where you can like reward points for positive behavior, subtract points, those kinds of things. So I like to think of Stash 101 as like Class Dojo meets online banking, right? So it's really a classroom economy that's based on a sort of a digital approach to the money. So it's really cool. So let me go ahead and play this for you.
With Stash 101, students learn about all kinds of money situations by actually experiencing them. They start by creating resumes, applying for real classroom jobs, and earning a simulated salary that's directly deposited into their virtual bank accounts. From there, students can use the platform to set financial goals, transfer money from checking to savings accounts, pay off credit card debt, set up auto pay for bills, purchase assets, and can even invest in the stock market based on real-time data, all with simulated money. Here's where it gets real. Teachers can reward positive behaviors in a number of ways, including with real-life items and experiences, so students can use their simulated earnings to buy real-world.
I cut it short there in the interest of time, but this is what I think is needed. It really is a classroom economy. You know, you think of a lot of times, I know, and somebody said that their daughter's 5th grade math teacher uses it. Actually, one of my kids' teachers used my classroom economy in their class in a paper-based format where students were applying for jobs and earned income, and they would have these different auctions, and they could earn things. I remember one of my children had a classroom economy that was all built off of shells. And so that was really kind of interesting with their sort of under the sea theme. But basically, you know, it's this one can be as simple or as complex as you want. And again, this one can be it incorporates taxes as well, the ability to pay or earn interest, and again, really a lot of customization. I think it's interesting, and with a lot of schools that are moving towards PBIS systems, these positive behavioral intervention and supports, it integrates very well with that entire idea. So this is completely free. You can get started and just create a teacher account, and then go ahead and try it on your own for a little while, and then import students. When you get started and you start setting things up, you have a lot of ability to customize. And Tony, I saw that you've attempted to use Stash with a personal finance class, so feel free to weigh in if you'd like. But you can kind of, you know, I like, I'm one of those that when I start something, I want to kind of start it simply and then add on layers as I go. And that's one of the things that I like about this, as opposed to some of the others. You can really customize sort of how in depth you want it to go. So for example, if you want your students to only have access to savings and checking accounts and say, you know what, I'm not ready to tackle the credit cards and the investing in 401k yet, totally fine. You can change the interest rates that are offered and or charged. You can change all sorts of different stuff about this and adjust like the bills that they pay. So for example, in my classroom economy, which a lot of teachers have used over the course of time, it's from Vanguard, and that's all available and free. And you could certainly take some of that curriculum and use that with Stash as well. But in my classroom economy, students pay for their desks. They rent their desks, right? So you can have students rent things. You can change and adjust these to make it work for you, as well as earning things. So, one of the things that I like in this is that they have some defaults that are sort of, some of them are more elementary level focused and some of them are more high school focused. So again, a lot that you can do. You can easily import your students. So that one I know is especially important for those of you who have long class lists and want to make sure that you can do that without too much trouble. They have lesson plans that are focused both on the classroom economy side, as well as for those that want to use it more for financial literacy. And what I think is neat about these kinds of programs is that they can be done in any classroom. So you know, we especially know in the elementary and middle school grades, a lot of times there isn't a dedicated personal finance course. And so things like this can kind of sit on top of another core course where they're sort of getting this sort of on the side, if you will. Here are lessons and complete lesson plans for doing this with and focusing in on the financial concepts. So again, very cool. I like the spinning of the wheel. You can adjust these as well and customize some of this. This is the investing simulator and what that looks like. All right, next one up is Mint. So anybody here ever used Mint for their own personal finances? The app is free. You can make it so that it talks to and integrates with your various financial institutions. It can get information from banks, and it'll take information about your credit and what have you. So Mint actually launched this simulation, I think, 2 years ago. And we had Jared, who you're going to hear from here in a minute, actually on one of our old webinars. So the program has been around for a little while, but has evolved a little bit over time. The TurboTax simulation is very different this year. We'll get to that one here in a minute. So let's take a look at this introduction to Mint.
Hi there, I'm Jared, and welcome to Mint. Mint is a financial tool used by millions of individuals to help manage their finances. Mint will hook up to your bank account to help you track your monthly spending and monitor your credit score. We've created a fictional character who needs your help to manage both. In today's world, planning your future is key for your financial well-being. That is why having the right resources in class is extremely important.
So again, we find that these sort of vary, right? So we went from the first one where you were completely fictional job, right? That was a budget challenge with a set income without the ability to fluctuate. In the second one, you're playing the role of somebody that has a certain
Hi there, I'm Jared.
Certain income based on the job that you apply for. In this case, you're given a specific personality and a specific persona. And so it pulls in all of this information from, instead of going out and pulling from actual financial institutions with bank information, they've simulated it. So it pulls information in from the bank of Intuit and also pulls in credit data for this faux personality. So they have all of this information and it's up to date with recent dates. So the dates are constantly changing and up to date as you go through this. You don't have to put in any student information. So the trade-off of that is that there's no backend portal for teachers. You don't create accounts. So, I know teachers who sort of sit on both sides or either side of that fence, right? They're like, oh, give me the portal, give me all the information. I want to see what my students have done. And then there's the folks on the other side that are like, yeah, that takes too much time and I don't want to have to deal with the setup. I just want to get on and use it and go away. So this is sort of on the one side of that. This is free to use, so there's no cost to access this. And again, it just uses the Mint website. So you go to Mint, you act like you're signing up for an account, except that instead of signing up with your own personal email address, you have to make up an email address that ends at intuiteducation.com. So the important thing is that students remember this faux email address and remember their password. They recommend in the materials that they provide that you use and have everybody in the class use the same password. I think it's something like Mint with a capital M 1234 exclamation or something like that. It's written in the materials. That way, when students forget, you can say, oh, it was this password, right? The key with this working for them to be able to go back in day after day for a few days or however long you want to have them use this is that they need to use the same device. So as long as you're in a one-to-one environment, you should be good. If they log into this through their phone, their own individual devices, or if you're on a bring your own device scenario, they should be good. If you're in a lab setting and students are, switching computers, that's where you're going to have a problem. So you want to make sure that students have the same device from time to time. Otherwise, they would have to create a new account, which can be a hassle. So when you get in, and again, you can go in and get started. You can go in and start playing around with this tonight if you want. Go in and follow the directions. You can go through, you can click around. It's just like you're in Mint. It's just like you have your own personal account, and you go in and you can see exactly what it looks like. And this is really that learning by doing piece, right? And this is where a lot of financial folks in financial education have been saying for years, like, it's one thing for us to talk about, keeping track of your spending and, knowing what you're doing and, making these good choices. And it's one thing to teach kids how to do it, and I know there's still, questions and debate over teaching, like how to keep a check register or what have you, but, teaching them how to use these real world applications, things like Mint that is free. It's not meaning that you're endorsing this, by the way. It's just saying, hey, here's one that we can try out. And, in the real world, you should evaluate different tools that are out there. This may or may not be for you. One thing that I would probably add to the end of doing this with students is, what did you like about it? Is this a tool that you would use for yourself to manage your own personal finances? If so, why? What did you like about it? And if not, what would you use instead? So anyhow, lots of different things that you can do with these. Again, it has the credit score component. So in this case, it's pulling info data, but users of Mint do see their TransUnion Vantage score in that, and it breaks down. So you can look at it and say, oh, okay, well, what are these components? Why are these affecting this score? And you can see how different components are improving or pulling that score up or down, and see if this changes over time that you're in the simulation. You can look at the different categories. And so one of the things that you can go through is have students look and see, oh, did all the expenses go to the right category? Oh, this looks like it needs to be changed. Okay, let's change this and update that. What does that do? Where are we on track? How does this budget, for example, compare to what, sort of a recommended budget is? What do we think about the allocation of these funds? So many things that you can do with these. Mint has done a great job putting together some student materials. So in the introduction to Mint, students click around and they need to go through and find the answers to all of these. By the way, and I always hesitate taking screenshots of things that are in Google Docs because it underlines things, but they have these both as PDFs and in Google Docs. So you have the option when you go in to just make a copy of this in Google Docs, and then you can make your own adjustments and share it with students however you like. So maybe you want them to do some, but not all of this. Maybe you want to add some of your own questions. Go for it, knock yourself out. So a variety of different resources that are provided. You can get to it on the Mint website by downloading the teacher toolkit. I'll also share with you some other options to access. So again, you can get to, there's PDFs and Google Docs, and then I'll show you these assessments as well. There's 4 assessments that are built in here that are all done in Google Forms. And again, it forces you to make a copy of those. So there's a series of activities that are aligned with this simulation. So you can see here, depending on how strictly you adhere to what it is that the activity recommends, roughly 6 to 7 class periods, depending on how you do that or what your class blocks are like. If you're on block scheduling, obviously this would be more like 3 class periods. And of course you can adjust this and make it what you want based on your class and how you want to fit it in. So again, this is a simulated character. So there's information, a little bit of background on who was Isaiah. And here's just some of the examples of what you'll find in some of this. They've done a great job of providing a bunch of screenshots, a lot of information that you and your students can reference with additional sort of calling out exactly what they want students to look at. So again, I mentioned before that there are assessments here. So when you go in and you open one of these, again, it forces you to create a copy and it'll put it into your own Google Drive account. And again, you can customize all this. These are made up as quizzes, so there are right and wrong answers to these, and it'll grade them accordingly. But again, you can adjust these. So on that first slide with them, I mentioned that they have they partnered with several national organizations. So Take Charge Today, some of you might be familiar, we've done webinars with the folks from Take Charge Today in the past. You can get a free teacher account with them. When you do, if you click on that link and you're logged in from the handout that I provided to you, it'll come here. Otherwise, you'll need to log in or get an account and then go back and click on that link. But you can actually access all of those things that were on the Mint site from here, along with answer keys to those. So, and then there are corresponding Take Charge Today lesson plans. So if you go in here, you can find the income and expense statement lesson plan from Take Charge Today, correlates and can be used hand in hand, and they provide information about how to do that with the budgeting for income and expenses component. So again, all of that information then is inside of Take Charge Today. Similarly, they worked with folks at the Council for Economic Education. So if you have an account on Econ EdLink, actually when I was grabbing screenshots of these, I was not logged in. I was prompted to log in to get to some of these. I think it was mostly the webinar ones. But most of these I was able to get to the majority of the content without having to actually sign in. But you can see there's, again, some of these same materials and same resources. Both websites have webinars that are done with Jared, where he goes in and spends more time talking through, what you'll find there and some of these resources. So if you want to spend more time, there's resources there as well. Similarly, the team at Intuit had another TurboTax, had a TurboTax simulation that they sunset, if you will. They closed that one out and partnered and launched a new one this year with EverFi. And so let me share with you this little video clip.
At Intuit, we are committed to advancing equity and improving the financial skills of students across the country. When it comes to taxes, things can seem, well, complicated. But having a foundational understanding of tax is critical to success as a young adult. That's where the Intuit TurboTax simulation comes in. Whether you want to teach teenagers about tax fundamentals, explain how taxes are calculated, or walk them through the tax preparation and filing process, this simulation has you covered, all at no cost to you, right at your fingertips. Intuit's TurboTax simulation follows the storylines of characters like Carlos, Dana, and Elani, who are ready to take taxes head-on. Students will engage with bite-sized interactive modules and will complete post-course assessments to check their knowledge and ensure they are confident and ready to go when tax season comes. Developed in collaboration with EverFi, a leading social impact education innovator whose courses are used by more than 3 million students every year. Get started at everfi.com/TurboTax.
So I saw somebody earlier was saying that their students are using EverFi and that this is a part of that. So you can use it and have your students be logged in and completely a part of EverFi, or you can use it outside of EverFi. It's just built on the EverFi platform. There's different ways to access it. This one is completely free, so you can again go in and access all of this information. I would strongly suggest creating an EverFi teacher account so that you can get in and really play with all of this and access some of the additional support materials. The way that this works when you first get in is that you can only access the first module, if you will, the first simulation, which is this one with Carlos on filing your taxes. It's the longer of the 5, it's 20 to 25 minutes. And then once you've completed that one, all the rest of these are unlocked and your students can do, or you can do any of these once you've completed that sort of first level one. So like many EverFi modules or other self-paced modules that are out there, it's sort of a mixture of content. You encounter information. So for example, these are little flip cards that you're flipping over and finding out more information. And so you go through, you have the choice of having the voiceover and having all of this read to you, or you can turn it off and read it yourself. You click on each of these different corresponding hotspots, or in this case, expand different little accordions. Here you have to answer some of these questions and confirm this information that you would find. So this is where it really dives into the TurboTax piece, right? So this is what it would look like if you were walking through TurboTax and starting out as a new tax or to complete a new tax form or tax form. So in this case, you're walking through and learning a little bit more. Here, the student looks at or clicks on the magnifying glass to sort of zoom in on and learn about different aspects of the W-2. And then here you're taking the information, reading it off of the W-2 and entering the information for yourself, or the student does that for themselves, calculates the federal return, then they go through and they learn some more about deductions. They do the state piece, which in this case, Carlos is based in Michigan. Then they input information here about account routing number and the routing and account numbers, and complete all of that. So again, it's education meets simulation. It's sort of simulation light, I guess. There's been a lot of commentary from teachers that use the old one and don't like change. They liked that one better. There's other folks that are like, this is great. This is exactly what I need. So anyhow, this is still relatively new, and I think it certainly offers them the ability to learn a lot. This is what it looks like if you're logged into EverFi. Again, this is where it's the first one has been unlocked, and the other ones are all of them are unlocked. If you didn't know, EverFi is offering a Financial Literacy Month Scholarship Contest. So this is going on right now. So this might be something that you want to look at. I believe that these modules qualify for that. So that might be something that you want to consider going in, registering, and having your students do. You can, from the website that's linked in the handout, access some additional resources. So they have this one-pager parent discussion guide, a glossary that I think comes in handy with these kinds of things, some curriculum and teacher support materials, like some discussion questions to do as you're going through the modules, or your students, before and after. I really like this at a glance sort of look at the lessons, the topics, the description, and what students will be able to do as a result. Again, they have partnered with Take Charge Today in this case, and have offered some additional resources, including another webinar there. Same thing again with the Council for Economic Education. So both of those are additional places. In some of the online chatter that I've seen about these, some folks have talked about them going back and using some of the IRS simulations. I do want to point out, and even the IRS website points this out, these are not current and not up to date. So like, for example, there is no longer a 1040 EZ form, folks. So if you're talking about a 1040 EZ, it's outdated. I just encourage you to approach that with caution. I know that there are folks that are choosing to use live versions of other platforms like H&R Block's free version, and using NGPF's mock W-2 forms to do that. That's totally another option. Just always be careful of what information is being collected from your students, that it's not identifying, and you don't get into any troubles. All right, in our time remaining, I'm going to talk about these last two, which are sort of shorter duration approaches to a budgeting simulation. And they both approach these from two different angles. And so I mentioned earlier that we would talk about three different approaches to budgeting. We had that cash flow budgeting piece earlier with the first one, with Budget Challenge. This one is the situation where you start with a job and an income, an occupation and an income, and work from that income to prepare a budget. And so let's take a look here at this one. This does come both in an online version and in a hard copy type. You'll see that here in a minute. And it comes from FAME, which is the Finance Authority of Maine. It is basically the Maine equivalent of FIA. So they're the ones that do student loans in Maine. So let's take a look at what they have to say.
Imagine yourself when you started making money decisions. There's probably something you wish you could go back and change, right? Maybe you'd spend or borrow less money. Maybe you'd set different goals for yourself. Or maybe any goals. Today's kids should feel confident in making their choices for the future. They should be able to understand the impact of their decisions before they make them. Now, your students can with Claim Your Future. Claim Your Future is an interactive program that encourages students to explore career pathways, education and training options, and money management, including budgeting and looking at wants versus needs. You can play it online or in person. Educators can use Claim Your Future in a variety of settings, as either a standalone activity or as part of a larger unit on careers, education, and financial literacy. The program works great with elementary and middle school students, and it can also engage high school students in a discussion about career pathways and post-secondary education and training options. To help you and your students get the most from Claim Your Future, we created an educator's guide that includes detailed lesson plans, homework activities, online resources, and more. So are you ready to help your students claim their future? Let's get started.
So that gives you a nice overview of this one. I personally, they have materials for both middle and high school. I think this probably actually would work incredibly well, really, from probably grades 4 to 8. You can use it in the high school levels, but I think here, honestly, if depending on what your schools are doing for career education work standards and in those grade levels and the capturing of pieces for students' portfolios and to show demonstration that students have met the career education work standards. This might be something that you might want to consider. Again, it does have a hard copy one. Teachers in Maine, where FAME is located, get these free of charge. Here in Pennsylvania, you have to pay for them. The kit itself is $299. So it's definitely something that you'd want to talk to your administrators about or seek to get underwritten. It comes with 50 of those wheels that students can turn and look at, and each one of the 50 represents a different career choice. The online version of it, however, is completely free, and so. And by the way, I'd encourage you to go and check out these cute videos, watching students play these and do these in class. But the online version, no charge for that, has 125 career options, and kind of similar to the first one that we looked at, some great embedded videos for students. So when they're in here in the website, they can watch this video. It'll pop up, and I'll show that to you in a second here. But just provide some backup or sort of background information. So again, lots of different careers. This isn't even all of them. It goes all the way down to Z with pursuologist. So, but here that pops up with somebody from FAME that's going to talk to them about, how the career choice that you make is going to impact how much education you need to have, and that there's a correlation there between education often and income, but that you have to pay for that education, and so there's a trade-off there. There's these nice useful resources for the students so that they know how to access all of the information that suggests playing the game more than once. Excuse me. So the educator resources here are easily available. There's some additional videos that students can watch that explain how to do them, as well as some of those content videos as well. There's an educator guide here for grades 5 to 8, as well as another one here for 9 through 12. Like I said, I think you could take this down even to 4th grade pretty easily. So Claim Your Future starts with the salary and works towards the budget. Reality Check goes the other direction. And so this one's been around for a long time. The Jumpstart Coalition has had it for many, many years. And you go through a series of questions, and you know are asked about where you're going to want to live, what kind of car you want to drive, what food you're going to eat, what have you. And from that, it takes those answers and derives an hourly wage, equates that to a weekly income, and then a yearly amount. And so this is then it populates that with jobs that might fall into that pay scale, and then gives some of this just sort of rough ballpark of education levels and hourly wages. So one of the things that I think I would encourage students to do is to do both, honestly, or take both approaches and look at it from both perspectives. So is it better to start with an income and work backwards, or is it better to start with how you want to spend your money and work forwards? What are the pros and cons to each one? So just might be another interesting approach to this. So that was a lot to cover. Now that makes you hopefully realize that why I wanted to split this into at least 2 sessions. So the next time that we get together will be again in 2 weeks on April 20th. So I invite you to come back. We'll be talking about more simulations. And like I said, a couple of you mentioned at least 1 or 2 others that are out there. Yeah, this is not all of them, folks. There's like so many, which is great. You've got a lot of options. But it can be overwhelming. So that's why I wanted to sort of put these together, kind of give you, the lay of the land, sort of an overview of each of these. So thank you for being here this evening, but I'd also encourage you to sign up for part 2 and come back with us. Hopefully you can do that. So thank you very much. I appreciate your involvement. I know you have lots of choices about where you can be and how you spend your time, and I'm grateful that you chose to spend it here with us this evening.